In the hills, the cities. The man sits in bed, his body sour with cold sweat. His knees are drawn up close to his body, one arm wrapped around them. The other reaches out, trembling for a glass of watered wine. He sips it and lets his breathing subside. Just another nightmare, just another bad dream, just another presentiment of what was waiting for him, for all of them. In half a lifetime of nightmares, this one had been notable. A maze of black stone and metal and flames, hook chains crusted with dried blood, and barbed blades clogged with bone and meat. Endless screaming. He had run, but he'd known they were right behind him. And when he finally tripped, and they caught up to him, he'd put his hands over his face as he whined and cried and begged and promised anything if they would only spare him, if they would just do it to someone else and let him go. They had stood in a circle around him, faces full of contempt, indifferent to his pathetic cries, their yellow sun-on-blue surcoats pristine despite the unspeakable filth. They had raised their shining swords as one, but before they could strike, could begin hacking him to pieces, he woke up. He puts the glass back and leans over to place a gentle kiss on the forehead of his sleeping partner, then slips out of bed. The sheets cling to him a little. He performs his morning ablutions. It is still dark outside, but he has no hope of getting back to sleep, so he might as well start his day. He washes as best he can, shivering slightly at the cold water. He pauses for a moment, looking at himself in the onyx-ringed mirror, tracing one finger along the gorgeous multicoloured tattoo that runs across his chest, that almost nobody has ever seen. Then he dresses, putting on a freshly laundered lamb's wool robe. His hand hovers for a moment over one mask of beaten gold, and then he selects another, silver and ivory, decorated with tiny chips of tempest jade. Before he leaves his apartments, he takes a moment to light a stick of incense at the shrine. Cantor, his arms wide, his face hidden behind the mask of wealth. The other sorcerer kinds cluster around him, trying to catch the black coins that flow from his outstretched hands into their bowls. He touches each of the urns and lakithos arranged before the icon in turn, whispering their names and bidding them good morning. He strains his ears, but he hears nothing. No delicate whispers, no hint of anything unseen in the corners. The office is quiet. He is the first one there. He settles into his chair. It is new and he does not like it. It does not know the contours of his body the way his old chair did, before it betrayed him in the middle of a meeting with one of the imperial traders. The woman had hidden her smirk behind her hand, but he had seen it, and for a moment considered having her cursed. Patroclus talked him out of it, of course. No need to go looking for trouble. There are half a dozen new documents on his desk. An invitation to visit his niece in Makeup, if he can find the time. He wouldn't find the time. A carefully couched request from a would-be merchant prince, complaining that people will not pay what his wares are worth. A request from the Grand Iliarch for an update about the white granite situation. And there, on the bottom, a folded letter. He turns it over in his hands without reading it. It must have arrived during the night. He taps it against his chin for a few moments, then crosses the room and opens the shutters. Still holding the letter, he stares out across the sea far below. The birds have woken up down at the docks, their raucous shrieking almost drowning out the sound of the waves. His window looks east, to where the sun is only now rising. A glorious crimson, yellow and blue sky that puts him in mind, suddenly, of an old rhyme that his grandfather used to recite. The beauty brings him no joy. It just reminds him of the nights in his dream. He closes the shutter again. It will get hot, he knows, stifling perhaps, but today he could do without the golden sun peering into his business. He settles back down into his chair, steeling his nerves. He opens the letter deftly and begins to read. Behind his silver and ivory mask, he begins to frown. Axos are signatories to the Liberty Pact, but relations were seriously damaged by the Sark debacle. For centuries, the Empire and Axos had little communication, but around the time of Britta's death, relationships thawed, primarily as a result of the Empire's successful intervention in liberating the gates of Ipatavo from its siege by the Druge. In the years since, the Empire and Axos enjoyed relatively positive but often volatile relations, with the Empire successfully strong-arming the nation into abandoning slavery and then inviting them to become signatories to the Liberty Pact. Dealing with the Axu is always tricky, because they are a divided and proud people whose attempt to present a reasonably united front belay a seething mass of politics both between and within the 5 citadels, each of which is essentially a city-state in its own right. Unfortunately, the incident with the raid on Sark and the subsequent Imperial diplomat response turned most of the citadels against the Empire, confirming their worst stereotypes about their western neighbours. The Axu ambassador to the Empire is Iliac Maxitios of the Towers of Cantor, of the same family as the Grand Iliac, the nominal ruler of the Citadel. They have long been the primary point of contact for Imperial citizens wishing to communicate with the magicians of Axos. They often seem exasperated with their Imperial counterparts, frustrated by their apparent inability to get the Empire to recognise that Axos is a nation worthy of respect. Axos. Status: foreigner. Ports: Cantor and Issyk. Ambassador: Finton Nighthaven of Navarre. The Sark debacle. The Axu blame the Empire for major losses sustained during the failed raid against the Mountains of the Moon. Back in the summer of 384 YE, the Grendel Paymaster, Muriel, proposed a joint adventure into the Mountains of the Moon, suggesting that they would join forces with the Empire and Axos to attack the heavily guarded mountain passes. The territory is rich in white granite. A lightning raid would have bypassed the defences and allowed those involved to steal granite and other valuable resources. In the end, the Empire opted not to give their support to the raid. The Axu claim, based on the official diplomatic communications they received, that the Empire informed the inhabitants of Sark that the attack was imminent, hoping that the Grendel would suffer heavy losses as a result. That certainly seems to be what happened, but unfortunately nobody elected to warn Axos and say they also suffered significant losses in the raid. They were incandescent with rage, perceiving that their own people had been sacrificed just to ensure that as many Grendel died as possible. Subsequent denials by the Empire utterly failed to convince the Axos that they were wrong to blame the Empire for their losses. If anything, every attempt to disavow responsibility for the collapse of the raid only served to further antagonise them. They scoffed at what they saw as the Empire's shifting narrative, and made it clear that Axos would assume that the Empire could not be trusted in future. The Axu fundamentally conceive of themselves as a proud, dignified nation, with as much of a pedigree as any of the nations of the Empire, and with just as much right to seize the good things of the world from the malicious and the barbarous. However, unlike the Empire, they are fundamentally not a great power. They are a small nation with little military might, and it is an undeniable truth that if the Empire boarded them, they would be defenceless if the Empire attacked. This made the Sark debacle even more devastating. It reminded them that, at least in their view, they are simply pawns in the game of nations to the Empire, and that no friendship struck with them can ever be won between equals. Eventually, the Empire agreed to provide reparations for the Sark affair, and Axos agreed not to mention the matter again. They have been blunt that the betrayal had done irreparable damage to the relations between the two nations, but further discussion were not going to improve matters. Instead, they formally acknowledged receipt of reparations and agreed to move on. They do not wish to hear anything further from the Empire on this matter, unless it began with a grovelling apology and the heads of the citizens involved. So, while they have dropped the matter, it does not mean they like or trust the Empire. In particular, recent efforts to suggest that the two nations might cooperate militarily are being received badly. There is currently no possibility of any kind of military cooperation with a nation they believe betrayed them to their deaths the last time they attempted to fight together against a common enemy. They would like to see the Druge destroyed, and the civil service believe that they might move against the Druge, though details on the precise military capacity of Axos are as scarce as they have ever been. If the Druge were fatally weakened. But they are not going to coordinate those efforts with a much more powerful neighbour they simply do not trust. The 5 Axos citadels are far from united, so it is true that some citadels are more favourably inclined towards the Empire than others. The citadel of Ipotavo is probably the most positive, a legacy of the military assistance they received less than a decade ago. There are individuals in Kaban who also favour the Empire, having enriched themselves in recent trade deals with Imperial citizens. These views remain the exception at this time, however. Advocating for the Empire is not a popular political position, and even those who have personal reasons to like the Empire feel the need to give lip service to their perfidy over the Sark debacle. Liberty and dignity. Defending Axos' right to be a signatory of the Liberty Pact has gone some way toward mending the damage done by the Sark debacle. The decision by the Empire to prevent any changes to the Liberty Pact were broadly welcomed by the Aksu. The nation was well aware that the Commonwealth and the Sumar Republic wished to see their nation ejected from the Pact, simply because the nation is not as large or powerful as the Empire. In theory, Axos could have vetoed any changes to the Pact, but the Commonwealth were clear that if that happened, they would dissolve the Pact and form a new one without Axos. Only the intervention of the Empire prevented that from happening. By thwarting the Commonwealth's ambition, the Empire has made a concrete step to improving relations with Axos. This action has been noted and acknowledged, even by those most hostile to the Empire, in part because it involved treating Axos as a peer and a friend. If the Empire had permitted the Commonwealth to expel Axos from the Pact, it would have been seen as another betrayal. With things as bad as they are, that would have ended diplomatic relations with Axos for generations. Instead, the steadfast support of the Empire for their former allies has helped to mitigate some of their fury. If there is more diplomacy of this kind in the future, icy relations with Axos may yet begin to thaw. Unity and understanding. Iliarch Kithra Deianira has offered to hallow one item to understanding for each member of the Assembly of the Nine. Each recipient must swear an oath to bear the item for a year. In return, the Iliarch has asked for 100 doses of Liao and a letter from the throne thanking the Iliarch. In recent months, an Aksu scholar named Theodosa, a mining member of the ruling clan of Ipotavo, travelled to the Empire, in the main to pursue some in-person talks regarding Born Watch, the unique artifactual pilgrim shield of vigilance. Whatever the outcome of those talks, they would appear to have been successful to a point. It is true that Theodosa left the Empire early, and she was not the only one. It seems, in part, that the Emperor's inaugural address regarding Imperial unity, while well received in the Empire, was alarming to Aksu ears. It was likely unintentional, but some of the words seem to have confirmed the persistent Aksu fear of Imperial conquest. However, while she is known to have left carrying a shield, it does not appear to be the shield she arrived with. Whatever the details of the matter, since her return there are reports that her political star is rising, but not in Ipotavo, where she enjoys little political influence in her own family and her elderly cousin, Adonai still clings on as the Grand Iliarch. Instead, it is in newly restored Kaban that this erstwhile scholar is making a name for herself, having apparently become a close theological ally of Iliac Kithra Deianira. This ambitious leader is known to be making a bid to become Grand Iliarch of Kaban, and that may be the least of their aspirations. The city has pulled itself from the ruins of the past and began to build again. A rapid regrowth, fueled by a narcotics trade that is rumoured to have been conducted via back channels with the elites of Anvil, most likely thanks to regular visitors of Vanderslack and Hippolyta of Kaban. Iliac Deianira is linked to this trade in some way, but their political ambitions are cantered on their advocacy for the political ideology of Nikitas Aksu. This is a phrase understood to mean something akin to the victorious Axis, in an old tongue of the Aksu people. It states that the central thing holding back the citadels of Axos is their divided and fractious nature. They lack a clear conception of themselves as one people and culture, rather than six who share history and geography. Advocates of Nikitas Aksu promote the idea that it is the shared destiny of the Aksu to unify in power, leadership, and strength, and drive the creator's evil from the world. Kaitha promotes the idea that while the pride of the Aksu people is important, they should learn from the success of the Empire and seek to emulate them implicitly, so that they may one day truly be a peer. Theodosia is a known advocate of the false virtue of peace, so her increasingly prominent role in advocating for Kaitha suggests that the Iliarch's ultimate aim is not based solely on military conquest, though their precise spiritual and ideological teachings are not known for certain. To that end, Iliac Deianira has responded to the ambassador's missive with an open offer to the Assembly of Nine. They have heard that the Assembly are interested in experiencing the auras of the forces many in Axos call understanding, and that the Empire denounces as peace. To that end, Iliac Deianira has responded to the ambassador's missive with an open offer to the Assembly of Nine. They have heard that the Assembly are interested in experiencing the auras of the force that many in Axos call understanding, and the Empire denounces as peace. Iliac Deianira is prepared to send an Axos priest to hallow one item for each member of the Assembly of the Nine. There is one small catch. The Iliarch is only prepared to extend this generous offer to scholar and priests who wish to experience the power of understanding firsthand. Any member of the Council of the Nine who wishes to take up the offer must swear an oath, before the priests and their peers, to bear the hallow item for a year. The Iliarch will not provide a hallowed item simply to see it catalogued and then deconsecrated or stuffed in a box. In return, the Empire would need to provide the priest, either Theodosia or more likely one of her students, with 100 doses of Liao and a guarantee of their safety. The Iliarchs had high ambitions for Axos, ambitions that will come a step closer to fruition if they can lay their hands on a significant volume of Liao. In addition, they've asked for a letter from the leader of the Assembly of the Nine, that is to say, the throne, thanking the Iliarch and recognising their goodwill in these affairs. The civil service believes that Kaitha intends to employ this letter in pursuit of their goals. Axos may be hostile to the Empire at the moment, but some of that is fueled by their perception that the Empire fundamentally disrespects them. Kaitha likely intends to flaunt the letter to allies and rivals alike, to demonstrate that, no matter how the Empire might treat Axos, they do respect the Iliarch. If one or more members of the Assembly of Nine wish to take the Iliarch up on their offer, then the ambassador will need to write to the Aksu to confirm the Empire's interest and arrange for 100 doses of Liao to be sent to them. Hand in the Liao and email plot at profounddecisions.co.uk. A priest will arrive at the following summit to perform the hallowings. A rising need. The Aksu are interested in purchasing up to 50 wains of white granite each season for the next 6 months. The Aksu are offering 18 crowns a wain. The ambassador can complete the sale by passing the goods to the civil service and confirming the amounts by letter to their counterpart. The offer of trade in wains is intriguing for the Grand Iliarch of Axos. There are some sources of the valuable resources in their territory, but more is always useful. The Axu have apparently some large project they are looking to start soon that would benefit from access to more white granite. So, in principle, they would be interested in purchasing white granite if it is available at the right price. They are aware that prices for such materials have been sky high in the Empire recently, but if it has dropped significantly, then it might now be possible to trade. To that end, Iliarch Maxitios is prepared to offer 18 crowns a wain for up to 50 wains of white granite this season and next. To conclude the sale, the ambassador will need to write to Iliarch Maxitios to confirm how many wains they are offering, and then pass the wains to the civil service. OOC note, hand the wains in for use in downtime. The respected staff of the two embassies will then complete the exchange. Axos cannot commit to buying more than 50 wains a season, and only for the next 2 seasons. But if the ambassador confirms that there is still a glut in imperial markets after that time, then the Iliarch will make a new offer. Further reading: Axos, Ambassador to Axos, Axos Ports.